You're listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEG Talk Radio.com. Click live stream tab or watch us on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I'm Dr. Wanzo, your show host of Mind Matters for the next 90 minutes. We're the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guests and not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. Welcome to Mind Matters. I'm your host, Dr. Cassandra Wanzo. I've been practicing psychiatry in the Atlanta area for the past 29 years. We welcome our guest host, Mr. Norman Carter Jr.
Thank you.
Norman is a retired Philadelphia police corporal. He has written a very compelling book, The Long Blue Walk, My Journey as a Philly Cop. It's available on Amazon. Please order it. Hi, Norm. Welcome.
Hello, how are you, doctor? Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Okay, we have a really interesting topic this evening. Our topic this evening is, here we go again. The shooting of Jake Blake. Again, here we go again. The shooting of Jake Blake. This past Sunday around 5 p.m. in Kenosha. Kenosha is a city about 40 miles from Milwaukee, my hometown. And it's in Wisconsin. Jacob Blake, age 29, was shot in the back 7 times at point blank range by a Caucasian police officer. He was shot while his 3 young sons, ages 3, 5, and 8, watched from the back seat of the SUV. The bullets severed Blake's spinal cord, shattered his vertebrae, and he has severe damage to several organs. He is currently paralyzed from the waist down. The police were responding to a domestic incident at the home between 2 women that Blake had attempted to de-escalate. The shooting has ignited outrage in Kenosha and across the country, including right here in Atlanta. Governor Evers of Wisconsin has called out the National Guard. Initially, he had 125, and then he sent in 250, and now, well, I hate to say his name, but number 45 is sending in additional National Guard and federal troops. And of course, he's blaming it on the Democrats and calling it anarchy. There has been rioting and looting in Kenosha. They've had smashing of squad cars, burning of vehicles. In Atlanta last night, things got really violent. They smashed the windows of the 5th Precinct Police Zone. They dismantled scaffolding. The officers involved in the shooting have been placed on administrative leave. Governor Evers of Wisconsin has called for a special legislative session to deal with these issues. His statement was as follows. We stand with all those who have and continue to demand justice, equity, and accountability for Black lives in our country. Lives like those of George Floyd, of Breonna Taylor, Tony Robinson, Duntre Hamilton, Ernest Lacey, and Seville Smith. And we stand against excessive use of force and immediate escalation when engaging with Black Wisconsinites. Things got even worse last night when a 17-year-old Caucasian male, Kyle Rittenhouse, a self-appointed militia vigilante, shot and killed 2 people, one in the head. One person is injured, but he killed 2 people and 1 person's injured. As of today, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. What is really interesting is there were several militia, including the Boogaloo Boys, the Kenosha Guard, which are all militiamen at the site. And I saw the video myself, and this is what happened on the video with the militia people. The Kenosha police force told the militia members, including the shooter, "We appreciate your being here." They gave them bottles of water. Another video shows militia members saying that the police told them that they would drive protesters towards them so that they can deal with them and leave. I mean, that's just, I'm just unimaginable. So I'm just wondering what your reactions to all of this are, Norm. I'm just overwhelmed.
This is a head shaker from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I could just go back to the initial shooting and watching that with my wife, who had to tell me to stop yelling at the television. There was just so much wrong that went on with the initial incident, and we really need to deal with that initial incident. Number one, was the male under arrest? We don't know that yet. We do see police officers walking behind him, guns drawn, and the male is obviously unarmed. So why did they have out their weapons? Number one. Number two, if he was under arrest, it was incumbent upon them to immediately stop him, tackle him, keep him from moving another step away from where they had initially told him he was under arrest. So that's another mistake. But the worst mistake of all is, and at this point, we don't know whether he was reaching in the car for a gun or a knife. We don't know that because we don't see that. But surely, not if he was under arrest, not tackling him before he got to the vehicle was a huge error. And next, how many times do you have to shoot someone?
Yes. What about that? 7 times in the back? They're carrying somewhere between 9mm or 40 caliber weapons. I can tell you that one shot from those weapons will disable anyone. I don't care where it hits you. If it hits you in the arm, hits you in the leg, you're completely disabled. That's a huge impact on anybody. To fire that gun 7 times, it's unconscionable. That whole part. And the other part of this is that no one talks about is the long-term damage to those children. Yes, yes.
It will be years, and they will have to undergo probably extensive psychological treatment.
Absolutely.
This is just absolutely horrendous. It never should have happened on a lot of fronts. And then the end, I wish also, I posted this yesterday. For everybody, how come I wish people could have watched the mother of Jake Blake.
I saw
I hate to be maudlin about that, but there's no way you could watch that press conference and not be emotionally overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. If you have any sense of humanity about it, the mother's speech was just magnificent. She was well spoken, and she dealt with the incident on so many different fronts. Now, sadly, the only video that you will now see on TV and online is the picture of the father, who was very angry.
Yes.
Understandably so. But that's what you see getting replayed over and over. And that is part of the genesis of a lot of this violence. There was no effort by the media or anyone else involved in that to say, you know what, maybe we won't keep repeatedly showing him. Let's show the mother who was actually begging for peace to resolve the situation. That would have been a humane step and responsible step in de-escalating some of the violence. The thing with the vigilantes, that is just unconscionable. It's unconscionable on their part, but it's establishing a trend that we are going to see over and over again. It will not end as long as we have states with open carry laws. There's a reason, a subversive reason behind that. These open carry laws. It's all about fear of Black people. I hate to put it that way.
You're absolutely right. Yes.
But that's what this is about, and what may happen, and I hope doesn't happen, is people are going to start bringing weapons on both sides to these demonstrations, and then this is when you have the chaos that some people are hoping for.
Well, then
both sides.
Well, I know the militias and the Boogaloo Boys. I mean, that's part of their policy. The Boogaloo Boys, they want a race war. That's what they are trying to precipitate. They want a race war. That's what and they call that race war the Boogaloo, and they call it the Boogaloo Boys. And
if you remember, we had a here in Stone Mountain a few weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, we had a mini one of these, a demonstration of what could happen in the past, because you had, once again, you have these militia, these guys out there with these AR-15s. And what happened is, on the other side, you had another male with a pistol on his hip. Obviously, he was licensed to have it, but you had people bringing these weapons. Nothing happened with as far as shooting went, but you had people bringing weapons to what are supposedly peaceful demonstrations. You're going to have chaos. And who are the idiots who keep calling for these nighttime protests? They are dangerous. They're going to get people killed. They appear to be organized by people who don't have the interests of the community at heart. I'm just appalled at the destruction, the damage, and now we have 2 people dead.
Yes.
Who should not be dead, and another person wounded. Yes. And I like to enlighten people, because a lot of times we hear people say somebody's wounded, and we have the cowboy picture mentality. Oh, he's wounded. He'll put a little rag on it and he'll be okay. When you get hit by some of these high-powered weapons, those wounds you suffer incapacitate you for life. They scar you for life. And obviously, this guy the person who's wounded, his arm was shot off.
Yes, yes.
One bullet, his arm was shot off.
That it was scary, like from a horror movie. I actually saw a video of that. It looked like from a horror movie.
Yeah, it's you cannot, and it's up to the states. And Mr. President, if you're listening, you need to get on television and prohibit people from coming to these peaceful, in quote, demonstrations with weapons. You need to tell these militia people to stay home, and you need to tell these states to rescind open carry laws, rescind those laws.
You're right. He's promoting it for fear. I guess he had the couple in Missouri who had pulled the guns on the Black Lives Matter, and he had them to speak at his convention. I didn't watch, but I saw clips from CNN where he had that couple to speak, and he's fueling the fears that Blacks are going to come. We want to keep the suburbs white and safe.
Yep.
And that Democrats are causing anarchy, and Joe Biden is behind it. And that's what he's using as part of his impetus to try to get reelected.
Yep. And this becomes like a reveille for people of this ilk who will get wind of a demonstration coming, and they're going to come up and start pointing guns at people.
Oh, you know what? The Kenosha Guard, they advertised on Facebook to meet there, and 3,000 people signed up to come to Kenosha of the Kenosha Guard, which is a militia. 3,000 people RSVP'd to come.
This is horrible. This is horrible. Again, the old saying goes, a rotten fish smells from the head. And when you have the president of the United States basically sanctioning this,
yes,
by having that couple at the Republican convention speaking in prime time, that's dangerous. And that fuels this type of fear, this type of hatred, and this type of response. You haven't, prior to that Monday speech by that couple, there were no people shooting people at demonstrations.
You're right.
But these people felt emboldened. You see these people being put up as stars, as heroes. They're in fact, they were called heroes for what they did. And now you have the lunatic fridge out there taking advantage of the opportunity to, you know what? Here is our chance to shoot some Black people.
Exactly. You know what? Let me tell you about the officer. Let me tell you about this officer. The officer's name is Luke Cordier, the one who shot Blake 7 times. And people, I mean, they scour social media, but they went to his social media page. And in 2014 in Wisconsin, there was a shooting of a 31-year-old young man. I forgot how many times he was shot, but it was multiple times. His name was DeAndre Hamilton. Yeah. Well, this same officer on his Facebook page, here's what he said about the DeAndre Hamilton's 2014 killing. It was a good shoot. That was on his Facebook page. It was a good shoot. That's what he said.
I read that, and for our listeners who don't remember that, this was a shooting where the Black male was walking away from the scene. He was 30 or 40 feet away from the nearest police officer. And that police officer shot him.
Oh, yeah, I found it 14 times.
Yeah, and he was not a threat to anyone at that point. I don't know what he did before, and I care not. I don't even care. But at that moment, he was not a threat to anybody. He was walking away from the scene. And this officer took it upon himself to shoot, again, 14 times. I'm telling you, again, these high-powered weapons, there's no reason to shoot anyone. There's no reason to shoot an elephant 14 times.
Exactly. He'd been sleeping on a park bench. That's what he'd been doing. He'd been sleeping on a park bench.
It's absolute insanity. We need to deal with it on that level, not for the sake of saying that these people are insane, but the penalties need to be swift. They need to be severe.
But why? Tell me, what does that tell you? Like 7 times, 14 times? What is that about? Shooting that many times?
Well, Doctor, I don't know whether you remember. I've spoken about this for the past 3 years, where in Philadelphia, a man, unarmed man, was shot 92 times.
Yes.
That's documented. There was no, and I hate to say it this way, because the police commissioner was African American and a highly thought of member of the NAACP in Philadelphia, nothing happened. Nothing happened to these officers. From what I was told, there were bullets, not only the 92 bullets that went into that male, but there were scores of bullets that went into people's houses and cars. But that type of thing has been going on, obviously, for some time, ever since you have police now equipped with weapons that, not like the old 6-shooters that I used to carry when I was a cop, but these have magazines that can hold anywhere from 15 to 20 bullets. And there's something about, you can continually pull that trigger until the magazine is empty. So 14 times that you shoot someone, you probably emptied your magazine, and the only reason you stopped was because the magazine was empty. People say, well, in Philadelphia, well, he kept moving. Well, if you get hit with a .40 caliber bullet, I guarantee you will move every time that bullet hits you, no matter how incapacitated you physically are, because the impact of those bullets are that great that they will cause you to move. There's no reason to shoot anyone 15 times. That's just crazy. Going back to Jake, Mr. Blake, I really would like to start calling him Mr. Blake. He's a man,
yes,
with a family.
Yes.
It's sad. What happened to Mr. Blake just should not have happened. And there's from the very, very beginning, the officers following him with the weapon, they were totally in error. Once you draw your weapon like that, and he was just walking away, he could have been tackled. He could have been tased. And I don't know whether they would even justify being tased, because he was walking away. He wasn't a threat.
You know, I don't know in terms of the details, but I've heard reports. In fact, there is another video from another angle showing him on the ground on the other side of the vehicle, where the police are on top of him and they're tussling with him, and he's on the ground on the other side of the vehicle. This is from another angle. They just showed that vehicle yesterday, and then he gets up from that and then starts walking. But they have the guns drawn as they're following him around, you know, the SUV. And his attorney said that he did not have a weapon.
Yeah, again, you're a trained police officer. We are trained in hand-to-hand combat. We are trained in ways to disable people that are non-lethal. You had more than one cop there, more than one. And you're telling me that these cops are so out of condition that, and I've seen the video, that this skinny black man overpowered them.
So what could they have done differently? What could they have done to
well, obviously, again, when was the decision made that this man was under arrest?
Or was he under arrest? Do we know?
No, that's what I'm saying. For them to walk after him with their guns out, he had to be under arrest. That is not clear. But if he was under arrest, why did they let him walk away? Number two, you had more than one cop there. How come they weren't able to get this man under control? And if you see the video, even as he was walking back, there are ways that they could have tackled that to the car. There are ways they could have tackled him before he got to the door of that vehicle. You're trained in these things. We didn't have tasers when I was a cop. We didn't have tasers. You know, it was only towards the end of my career that we were even issued mace, and I never had mace at all. But it was only towards the end of and even at that, only supervisors had the mace. So now you have all of these alternative tools that the police have, including the tool of numbers. There was more than one there. That's problematic. I see the officers grabbed his T-shirt.
Right.
They could have done it just as they got it, pulled it when he was at the door. They could have done that before he got to the car. But you know what? You can't do that when you have your gun out.
Someone reported that he was looking the other way as he was shooting. Someone reported that the officer was looking the other way as he was shooting him.
You know, that's like the in the George Floyd case where the cop is on his neck and one hand is in his pocket and the other hand he's talking to some cops. Yeah, I'm more concerned not with what he was looking at or what he was doing. The fact that he did what he did, which is just absolutely horrendous. There's absolutely no justification. They mishandled it from the very beginning, similar to the Rayshard Brooks case here in Atlanta. Mishandled from the very beginning. If you're going to arrest somebody, you go ahead and do that. You don't have them engaged in a conversation where they can't walk away. And then after 30 minutes, you say, well, you know what? I think we're going to try to make this arrest. By that time, this person's mind is going, I got to think of a way to get out of this. And a lot of bad things happen.
Right.
A lot of bad things happen.
And getting back to the children, right? There were 3, 5, and 8. And so at that age, witnessing something like that, you're right, they're going to be traumatized and will probably suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. They'll have nightmares. They'll not be able to sleep. They'll just, have trouble functioning. So they definitely are going to need a mental health counseling so that they don't develop post-traumatic stress disorder 3, 5, and 8. And
looking at it, just the damage. I mean, who's to say that these children won't grow up to actually hate police who disabled their father?
They'll probably be afraid of police
or anyone in authority.
Exactly.
And what's going to happen if they're normal? There's going to be some deep-seated anger, especially in the 8-year-old. 3-year-olds are sometimes, and I call me out if I'm incorrect. There's a defense mechanism in younger children that sort of clouds traumatic memories out at some point. Not that they're totally forgotten, but there are other things that it's like a defense mechanism. So a couple of years from now, they may not even think about it unless pressed. But that 8-year-old, it's no.
And the 8-year-old, it was supposed to be his birthday, and so
yes,
what's going to happen with him is because children will often, think that they're the reason that something happened. He'll blame himself. That it was because of me. Because if we hadn't been, whatever going, for my birthday, then it wouldn't have happened. So he can internalize and blame himself for what happened.
Sure.
But they're all going to need some kind of therapy, long-term therapy.
We're talking about the 3 and the 8-year-old, but the 5-year-old, they're all going to suffer some sort of mental incapacitation because of this. And because of the circumstances of it, it's that's going to be just so rough on the family.
Exactly.
That is just so rough. And how do you recover from that?
What was interesting to me, after it happened, I read a lot of responses on Facebook, and overwhelmingly, the majority of Caucasians that I see that posted feel the shooting was justified. They said he should have complied. Some people call him a thug, a scumbag. I mean, it was just amazing how their reactions. And overwhelmingly, they said, oh yeah, he was definitely going to his car to get a gun. So they're making all of these, negative assumptions about him. Well,
one of the things I talk about in my book is people who haven't been exposed on a regular basis to Black people, and their only exposure to Black people is what they see on the news, and that's usually with a Black person in an orange suit or being arrested at a crime scene. That becomes their perception of all Black people. And so all of us are violent. All of us are prone to criminality. And so consequently, that colors their perception of any incident that involves police or any other citizen.
Exactly.
That's I'm just speaking with someone on Facebook about this. That because you condemn a few white police officers, that means you're condemning all. No, not at all. And if you look at the circumstances with an open mind and you know anything about policing, you would know the police had no business with their guns out following this man. That's number one. There's just absolutely no reason. He has no weapon in his hand. He's not a deadly threat. Now, they taught me years ago, the guy might be beating your butt. You get involved in a scuffle. That's no reason to pull your gun out and shoot him. I mean, unless the butt beating is such that you were in fear of your life. That's different. That's what somebody's got you on the ground and they're strangling you, or they got you in a hole that could that could be catastrophic. There was none of that was going on. There was no threat to life. And once you pull out your gun, your options become severely limited because, as I said, they could have tackled him, but you can't tackle somebody when you have a gun in your hand. You have 2 police officers following this man, I think, if I'm correct.
Yes.
They could have gotten him back down on the ground.
Yes.
That's easy to do. There's no way that 2 cops can't get one guy on the ground. He wasn't that big of a guy.
But you know, the frame of mind of that particular officer, if he felt that the shooting of Duntre was a good shoot, that tells you something about the kind of mentality that he has.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, that type of attitude sets the stage for future actions, because now he sees nothing wrong with that one cop doing it. So, hey, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing, because you know what? He got away with it. There's nothing wrong with it. I've got the district attorney on my side. I've got the fraternal order of police on my side. I'm good to go.
I have a question. Like, if someone's an officer, does anyone monitor their social media posts to see what kind of things they're saying? Is that monitored at all?
Well, I think no, not to my knowledge. Only when there was something that happened in Philadelphia last year, where there were posts that had been going on for a couple of years. On this guy had cops had a group account, and all of those accounts were about their dealings with Black people and how they viewed Black people. And as a result of that, I think something like 20 or 30 cops were fired. Several other cops were disciplined. The officers, their cases where they made certain arrests, the cases were thrown out. So that was cost the city a lot of money. But there's a lot of this going on. And it's, again, let me caution, it is not all white police. So let's not even walk down that road. What happens is that there are some, that's a reality. And they are racist. Some of them belong to the KKK. Some of them belong to skinheads. That happened I can talk about Philadelphia. Factually, they found one who was a member of a Nazi organization, only because he had a tattoo on his arm, and he was on a detail during the summer, and he didn't have the tattoo covered up, and it was seen. So that's going on. That is a reality.
What happened to this guy, the one with the Nazi tattoo? What happened to him?
Oh, he was fired.
Okay.
He was fired. He hadn't engaged in any particular overt behavior at that time, but the fact that he had that tattoo, and based on interviews that they had with him after that, he was terminated.
So then somebody was monitoring their social media posts to see what they were saying. So someone.
Yes. Oh, yes. But it came about, I do believe, and I have to go back and reread it. The genesis of it had something to do with a complaint that was made, and one person looked at the post, and then that led to another person looking at it, and then it got to police internal affairs, and probably got to the media. And once it gets to the media, it takes a life of its own.
In terms of Kenosha, Kenosha is 67% white, 13% Hispanic, and 10.8% Black. The police department of Kenosha has 200 officers, and they're estimating only 10 to 15 of the officers in Kenosha are Black.
It's a problem. That's a problem. One of the things I intend to do, probably I've got sidelined by a few things, is I'd like to encourage more young Black men to do what I did in the 60s, because I saw that there were injustices being done into the community that I grew up in. And one of the ways that you can help to foster change is by being a part of that group and doing what you can, because you know the injustices that take place and you know what's bad. And the community, our communities need more Black police officers, but now Black police officers are stigmatized. And I was stigmatized when I joined back in the 60s. But you can't let that
stigmatized by you. Whites or Blacks or both?
Blacks. I quote in my book that a guy that I grew up with, when I told him that I was was joining the police department, he said to me, "Norman, be a fireman, be a garbage man, be a mailman, but don't be a cop." They weren't respected in our neighborhood. They were feared. They weren't respected. And people need to see that there are people who look like them that they can trust. Because the only Black police officer that I remember coming into our neighborhood that anyone knew was a police officer who had gone to school with several of the people on my block, who came back and arrested someone really to make points with his bosses on our block. And that person became the template for what all Black cops are. What you do is you go and join the police department, then you come back and turn on your community. And that's sad. But yeah, you have 300 cops and you only have 10 Blacks. No, that's a prescription for disaster.
But that's how it is in Wisconsin. Like growing up in Wisconsin, you know, well, when I went to medical school, I went to the University of Wisconsin Medical School in Madison. And I had several of my classmates who told me that here they are now, they've gone through high school, college, medical school, that I am the first Black person that they ever met. They're in medical school. They'd never even met a Black person before. And I was surprised. Several told me that.
It goes back to what I said, that the people's only interaction, but no interaction, the perception of Black people is determined by what they see on television.
And what we see on TV, wow.
On the news. And that is, it's sad. It's sad. It's not only sad, it's dangerous, because it colors people's perception of who we are. Most of us are law-abiding people trying to make it through this life as best we can, being at our best, and getting the best for our children. We're not thugs. We're not criminals. We are as much in fear of criminals as the next person. But when you have situations like we just had in Kenosha, where there's obviously an angry situation, and I don't know whether anybody in that situation was seriously hurt, but the idea is for the situation to end. So if you can end it by having the participants walk away, you let them walk away.
Oh, I see Paul. Paul, can
yes.
You hello, Paul. Well, I see him. Don't hear him. Paul.
Looks like he's moving.
Okay.
Yeah, he better sit down. Oh.
Paul, you need to get stationary. Paul. Okay.
He's stationary now.
Okay. Paul? Okay, well, if you can hear us.
Yeah, he's
you
moving.
Speak, we can't hear you. Paul? Okay.
I think his signal is probably going in and out, and that's what the problem is, if he's moving.
Okay. So you were saying that as far as like being stigmatized by Blacks, do you think that that's changed at all, or is pretty?
No.
It
No.
hasn't? Really?
No, I don't think it's changed because you look at your television, your news media. Once again, it's the Black person in an orange suit or being handcuffed, walking away. You see, even at demonstrations, protests, they always go to the angriest Black person.
Exactly. Do you feel like Black officers are still stigmatized in the Black community?
Yes, and this is why there's a recruitment challenge in getting Black police officers to join. And I'm going to post a video probably in the next week or so about that on my personal website. That needs to change. We need to change, and there needs to be an expectation that we don't have Black police officers coming on and then adapting the same mannerisms and the same behaviors as some of these bad cops, because that happens a lot. What we need, and I write about that in my book, what we need is people who are sensitive to the community. And then as far as that goes, I don't care whether they're Black or white. If you can come into my community and respect me as a human being and understand that you have to not have that perception that I'm a bad guy just because I'm Black. That has to end. That I can't look at you and have a civil conversation because I'm Black. That has to end, and it has to end for on both sides. I even write about this, about how you speak to people can de-escalate a situation. Like we had the thing here in Gwinnett the other day where there was a hostile encounter between the police and a lady, and instead of de-escalating, he tried to outcuss her.
The police officer did?
Yeah, that happened here in Gwinnett County.
Wow.
So he was fired not because of the actions that he took, but he was fired because he inflamed the situation by his behavior. And this wasn't the first time that had happened to him. This had happened to him before, and he had been disciplined for it. And now he comes back and he repeats the same thing, and now you have a bad incident.
Was he Caucasian?
Yes.
Was the woman African American?
Yes.
Oh, wow. He was cursing at her?
Yeah. I mean, he was, you name it, he said it. Yeah.
Wow. Paul, we see you, but you're muted. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yay!
Hey, guys.
Hello there.
So you're
oh, my God.
I hope you're stationary. You're not moving.
I am very stationary. I was caught in traffic on 285 when we was logging in. Hi, WCEG family. Caught in a rainstorm. I mean, everything that could happen happened.
Yes, we've been talking about, what happened with Mr. Jacob Blake, his shooting, and then with the 17-year-old, how does a 17-year-old what kind of rifle was that he had? The 17-year-old that shot the people. What kind of rifle was it?
Well, that was an AR-15, and unfortunately, he can't even legally own a rifle in the United States of America until he hits 18. So the question is, where did he get it from in the first place?
Where did he get it from?
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
I got to be honest with you guys. I have been researching and talking to, full intellectuals of this all day. I cannot believe this is happening. As we talked throughout these last couple of weeks together, last month and a half, I told you my biggest fear is proliferation of all these weapons. This, like, my fears are coming true to a certain extent.
Yes, they have.
What you think, Norm? Have you ever seen so many guns on the street and so much prolific violence?
No. In fact, this is what part of our conversation before you came on. So we're all on the same page. Yeah, it's crazy, and like we were saying, the fact that the Republican convention has these two people on Monday and made them heroes, the people who pulled guns on protesters, the couple in, where was it, Missouri somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah, who pulled guns on two protesters. You made them heroes. Well, now you're giving license to these idiots to come out to these demonstrations with weapons, an AR-15. And I'm telling you, folks, an AR-15, when it hits you, it does a whole lot of damage. This one gun blew this man's arm off.
And I saw the video. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I saw the picture and video of it. I was just shocked, amazed and shocked.
Well, before I say another word, hey, Brother Norm.
Hey, now.
Hey, Doc.
Hey.
And our wonderful Penny and the WCEG family, I apologize for my tardiness, people. Oh, boy. It's been amazing.
It happens.
But Norm, I got to tell you, I guess the thing that really caught me the most, how the shooter, Kenosha PD, initially were welcoming them like heroes, like part of the family.
Yes, yeah. I reported how they said, we appreciate your, they said, we appreciate your being here. The police actually said that to him, we appreciate your being here. And then one of the militia members on the video, I heard him say that the police told them that they would drive the protesters towards them so that they could deal with them and the police could leave. So that the police were driving the protesters towards the militias. That's what one of the militia guys say. But you heard the police offering them water. I heard that.
Kind of reminds you of the movie Purge, huh?
Yes.
I didn't see the movie Purge. Oh.
Yeah.
What happens? I don't know in the movie Purge.
Paul, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
The initial arrest, and I put that in quotes. What are your feelings on that? Have you seen the video?
I saw the video. Again, as a defensive tactics instructor, I was shocked about how, even if that initial struggle, there was no means of controlling the suspect.
We said the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, that's been consistent in most of these situations that led to shootings.
Yeah.
The lack of being able to physically control by academy-approved techniques.
Exactly what I said.
The second thing that struck me was, did you have the right guy in the first place, even probable cause to an effective arrest? Because my understanding, there was an incident and he was trying to be a peacemaker, Mr. Blake.
He's trying to de-escalate the two women fighting. Yeah.
Right.
So again, and this is where, unfortunately, it's hard for me to support the brothers in blue, regardless of what their racial makeup is, when they proceed to use force and, how should I say, intimidation as a tool, rather than taking 5 to 30 seconds to even understand the scope of what you're dealing with before you react. Yeah. Because it wasn't a high stress situation, the conflict, the physical conflict was already done. Now you're in an interview mode.
Yep.
There's no reason for you to fear for your life. There's no need for you to react with force. There's even a need for you to rush this process. This is what we interview.
Yeah.
there was no communication to resolve a problem.
Yeah.
We look bad. I mean, there's nothing to justify what took place in Kenosha on any level.
Paul, I was yelling at the television when I saw the video. My wife had to sit. My wife had to stop me. Says, "Who are you yelling at?" But that whole thing. And then one thing I said to Dr. Wanzo just a little while ago was, you have a situation where, let's say you have a disturbance, and then you arrive, and the disturbance has been it's darn near over, and people are walking away. That's what you want.
Absolutely.
You want people to walk away.
No report, no work, no nothing.
When I arrived, situation was adjusted, no police action taken. That's your report. Is everybody okay? Anybody hurt? No, we're fine. Okay, if you need us, call us, we'll come back. That's the end of it. That's the end of it. You're mad at somebody who is not under arrest, and they don't turn around because you said turn around and come back here, and they didn't turn around and come back. What did they do?
You think so? He was taking it personally. You're saying he was taking it personally?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It was extremely personal.
Paul, before you came, I was sharing how the officer who shot him 7 times on one of his social media, he had posted this reaction. In 2014 in Milwaukee, Dontre Hamilton was shot 14 times. He has mental issues. He was on a park bench. They shot him 14 times as he was walking away. Well, in response to that shooting, the officer who shot Blake said it was a good shoot. He said that in his Facebook page. He called that shooting a good shoot, shooting the guy 14 times in Milwaukee in 2014. So that's the kind of mindset that he had.
Doc, that officer is a perfect example of the culture of Kenosha Police Department. Mm-hmm. And until this incident, I've never heard of Kenosha Police, but I know many of towns and agencies, and these small, that think and act the same way. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, I had 2 on-duty shootings in my career. Mm-hmm. Not one of them went past 1 shot fired. Mm-hmm. Shoot someone 7 times at point blank, especially in the back.
Yes.
That shows a lack of discipline and control of any kind of force as a professional law enforcement officer.
And Paul, can you explain, because I did this too, and maybe we can show that we're both of like minds. What happens to a person when they're hit with a .40 caliber bullet?
Oh, wow. Let's put it this way. You're not going to keep walking away, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And the hit, and trust me, audience and Doc, me and Norm are not laughing because we look at it as humorous. We're laughing because of the lack of discipline and the lack of common sense that was used by these officers.
Yep.
The shooter, 7 rounds, .40 caliber, literally at point blank range. Mr. Blake is lucky to be alive.
Yes, yes.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle, but it also shows the lack of firearm training by this officer, that if you shot someone 7 times with .40 cal at point blank range and you still didn't terminate the threat, then that tells me your firearm control was subpar. The officer is not only on trial for this, but the department as a whole is on trial for this.
Yep. The department in Kenosha has about 200 officers. They said only 10 to 15 of them are Black in Kenosha.
And I can imagine if you were allowed to interview the Black officers, what they would tell you the culture is like. What they would tell you that the white officer, not only are very aggressive to minorities, but also they're probably just as aggressive to the Black coworkers.
Yep. Yep. And keep your mouth shut.
Keep your mouth shut. Wow. Yeah. I guarantee Black officers in that department we discipline a lot stricter and a lot sooner than white officers would be.
Yeah, you need to be glad you have a job.
Wow.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And you know your place.
Yeah.
And they're subject to that every day. We're constantly reminded that you know your place.
Yep. Kenosha itself is 67% white, 13% Hispanic, and 10.8% Black. And it's 40 miles from Milwaukee.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we already have identified previously how racist the state of Wisconsin is.
Mm-hmm.
Doc, you informed me of the amount of racism.
Right. Oh, guess what? Remember I bought you some cheese? When I went home for my birthday in July, we went to Kenosha, and that's where I bought the cheese, was in Kenosha.
Oh my God, I got to give you the cheese back now?
No, that's from Kenosha. It's from Kenosha.
Yeah, but is that Kenosha cheese going to bully the other cheese in my fridge?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it was made in Kenosha. It was bought in Kenosha.
Wow.
I have a suggestion. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, I know this no laughing matter, but right now, this is one of these situations I got to smile to keep from crying, because that was one of the worst abuse cases. No, to me, that was worse than George Floyd.
Yeah, it was. And as I said earlier, to watch that mother and his sisters at that press conference yesterday, I had to like gird myself, because I mean, the tears were, just that far away from coming out. I mean, that's the one thing I liked about that interview, was that it brought the human side to it. There's no way,
very emotional.
There's no way, white or black, that you could look at that video, look at that press conference, and not have a feeling of compassion for that family and for that man who was now paralyzed needlessly for nothing. And I became
very emotional as well. I'm sorry, Norm.
No, go ahead.
I'm like you. I'm still mad about it.
Yeah.
There was no reason for escalation of force.
No.
None whatsoever.
No.
That was not protecting and serving. That was intimidation and bullying.
But I was sharing how on Facebook, a lot of the Caucasians are saying the shooting was justified. He's a thug. He's a scumbag. And they were saying, oh, he was probably going to his car to get a gun. And they were saying it was perfectly justified. It's what most of the people who responded on Facebook that were Caucasian, that's what they were saying.
But they failed to take in consideration why he was there in the first place and how did he get involved in that. I don't know what his relation to the two combatants, but at some point he sort of hey, listen,
well, let me tell you,
this.
Let me tell you, I have some friends in Wisconsin, and this is what they were saying, that the two combatants were both women that he was dealing with.
All right, listen, I'm not even going to sit here and even remotely act hypocritical. I don't know a man alive at some point who has not been between two women or had conflict in his life.
Okay.
So I'm just happy he got between them and stopped them from hurting each other, because most brothers will walk away and be like, that's your problem.
Yeah. And but still, we had to not lose focus on the actual situation itself, and how this is now becoming, thanks to media coverage now, it's a national issue. It's not just a Kenosha issue. Kenosha is just one of these little isolated small towns. This will never happen here towns that has happened. And it can happen anywhere. And going to that, because we got to talk about resolutions here. One of the things that I think that they really need to stop is this ending of qualified immunity.
Well, no, what exactly is that?
Wow.
Yeah, I know that's a touchy.
I've heard the term, but I'm not. I don't know what it means.
That means you can't sue. You can't sue the police officer, and you can't sue the city, as long as what they did in good faith. That's the long or the short of. Yes.
That's a policy everywhere.
Yes.
Well, you got to and add to what Norm said, Doc. Our actions a lot of time as professional law enforcement officers, the simplified version of it is acting under the color of law.
Correct.
Basically, that's what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
So you think Mr. Blake can't sue the police department?
Oh, yeah, they can.
Definitely.
But it's difficult.
Oh.
It's a long road. But what ideally, and situations, and this is what it used to be, you could sue the city, you could sue the department, and you sue the individual police officer.
Yeah, you go for the deep pockets.
Right. Because that's, and what that's going to do is people are going to look at, before they take these type of actions, they're going to look at it and go, my family can personally suffer from what I do on a job. Now, what that will do is that's going to cause some guys to leave, but you want those people to leave. And so that it accomplishes your part, you're part of the problem. But this is part of, and it's a really extreme step, but this is part of making departments and individuals feel accountable for the actions that they're taking.
Someone had a question, said, with those internal conditions, what do you say to someone who asks, why do you still serve?
Well, it goes back to what I said earlier. We need honest, good police, honest, good African Americans to step up and step in to help protect their community. Give the community the type of service that they want from police officers. You don't need to be brutal. You don't need to be short-tempered, or, you have to come in with some sort of understanding and an open mind and the ability to look at people as human beings. All of us have problems. All of us get angry sometimes. There are issues that come up, but every issue, like this one, for example, which is basically a domestic disturbance, short story, and where you're prepared to take the most aggressive action possible in a situation that is really minuscule on the list of events that you can get involved in. Because again, there was a disturbance. Everybody was walking away. Because you say somebody needs to stop when there's no crime being committed, and you say that somebody needs to stop, and now because they don't stop, you say, well, you know what? I'm going to take it to the next degree. I want to tackle this person because they wouldn't stop. And because they beat my butt and my partner's butt, this skinny little man beat both of us. So now we're mad and we're going to pull out our guns. That's what happened with Rayshard Brooks. Same thing. Two cops couldn't control one guy. Now, he was a big guy. He wasn't a little guy. But nevertheless, you're trained. There's training that teaches you things you can do to control people. It just got out of hand. It should never have gotten out of hand. And these guys, people know who these hot-tempered cops are, and there need to be ways to get them out, because they're only going to bring more harm, more shootings, and the end result is you have what happened in little old quiet Kenosha.
Someone saying, where do we go from here? Where do we go?
We used to have a thing called conflict resolution, verbal judo. Now they call it something along the lines of, how should I say it? What is it now? CIT, crisis intervention. We've been trying to figure out where do we go from here for over 200 years now. We still haven't got it right. I think policing is more than just a situation to respond to. To me, policing is a the cultural habits and the culture of a community, of numerous communities that are interdependent, but at the same time, there's no harmony between them. You can't have a community without a police department of police, and you can't have a police without a community that supports it. How do we resolve? Actually, human nature already determined that we're not going to resolve. We change chief of police. We get rid of certain officers. We change whole departments. We still have the underlying issue of people don't trusting and don't want to work together. Philosophies change for every head of household, but the results are the same. Same department, every couple of generations, you got new people. I'm not sure if resolution is the thing now. I think now it's really for the whole society as a whole to look at itself and be honest and say, listen, are we really that bad or that racist? Or are we determined now to change society before we start changing components of it? You know, this presidential election right now is probably going to be one of the most important elections.
Yes.
The next couple of years. You know, we have allowed what I call the worst of the worst to finally come to head. Resolutions. Man, all stakeholders involved going to have to work on this one. Black, white, Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, you know. At what point do we say enough is enough?
Yeah, I have a question. I know there's this thing called the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act.
Yes.
What can you say more about that? What that involves?
I think that's going to go before Congress the next session.
But what does it involve? What are the policies? What are they trying to institute or change?
Well, they're trying to get a nationwide standardized policy, standardized training, standardized response. But until that actually happens, and then it's going to be hard because right now we have presidential actions and laws up on the books. You have sheriffs and police chiefs nationwide in certain states saying, hey, well, I'm not going to take away guns for my Second Amendments, regardless of what the government says.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a problem. Thanks to your president. And I hate to keep, or should I say, I really don't hate, but I have to keep saying some things that I have in my book because I had some resolutions. And one of the resolutions is that every community, regardless of racial or economic status, needs to have regular meetings with their local police department. The local police commanders, that needs to go on at least once a month. And at those meetings, that starts an airing of grievances. It begins with an airing of grievances. That's the first step to de-escalation. You have a problem here or a problem there. How do we resolve it? You have those discussions. What happens is those commanders and the police officers begin to look at these people as human beings all of a sudden. No matter who they are, they begin to look at them as individuals. That's very important. Most important, though, is that there's a line of communication that gets established. And after you get through the initial yelling and screaming, you begin to have civil conversations. These are the problems in our community. How do we deal with them? Let's have an honest and open discussion. That is the first step. And that doesn't require national intervention. All of that requires is for the public to go out and demand that we have these meetings. And I think this is one of the reasons why when I notified certain government leaders, certain police commanders in troubled police departments, gave them copies of my book, why they ignored it, because a lot of them, they don't want this. They don't want to interact with the public. That's a purposeful act. And that purposeful act is why we're having the problems throughout this country, because police commanders and police departments only speak to the community at press conferences when you have incidents like this. And there's so much that can be done beforehand, away from the cameras, no publicity, where you're just having civil conversations. Yeah, will those conversations become hostile sometimes? Yes, they will. But it's better to deal with that hostile conversation in that room. And perhaps later on, you can pull that particular individual aside and say, you know what, we really need to have a talk about what's going on, and then take active steps towards resolutions. You need to revamp the Internal Affairs Bureau of these departments and make them more accountable and more open. I know I have had dealings with the Internal Affairs Department in my own former city of Philadelphia. Totally corrupt. And to some extent, it's still corrupt. And they're still having issues. But it all generates from the fact that you can't, there is no active community intervention problems. These police commanders need to go visit churches. Go uninvited, go in full uniform, go uninvited. And said, I just want to come in and say a couple of words, blah, 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 and leave. But these are the steps that you take. You go into your schools, walk in, speak to the principals, be standing in the schoolyard when kids come in. Let them see a police officer not engaged in arresting someone or telling someone to do. Let's see a police officer or a police commander standing in the schoolyard just smiling and saying hello to the kids as they come in. Those type of simple little steps don't need national intervention, and they will have tremendous positive impacts on the communities. Okay. Very simple.
What about like when you have individual officers like this officer in Kenosha with the mindset of like saying that's a good shooting? I mean, how do you weed them out or screen them out? Is there anything that can be done?
Well, that's where you get to back where we need to start monitoring social media. Sad to say, but that's a right you need to give up as a police officer.
What about but screening before they're hired to, so you used to screen out those types of people?
Well, most jobs that you go to now, that you apply for, they ask you about your social media accounts on your application. They ask you about that. And what they do is prior to the hiring process, a lot of times they have people research your social media posts to see what you're really saying and what you're really like and what your personal views are. That needs to happen with police officers because you're in a position of trust. You're in a position of trust, and you have people's lives in your hand at times. Paul?
Unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little nervous, and primarily because we have a situation right now where trust has been eroded to the point where people feel that they can now legally start taking the law into their hands. And it's reached a point where this vigilante attitude may not even give us opportunity to find peaceful resolutions at this point.
Yep.
As Norm said, wow, these departments have no intent to really change or to interact more with the public to create better relations. They're going to pacify as much as they can for CYA, but are they really going to take an in-depth look, not just individual officers, but the culture of an agency and make a difference? We just had a police chief in the Metro Atlanta area and talking about social media and its effect, just posted a really negative post about the Black Lives movement, and you're the chief of police.
Where was this? In Atlanta?
No,
not in the city of Atlanta. I believe it was Johns Creek, if I'm not mistaken, which is one of the communities that charted itself as a city to avoid now to separate itself from Fulton County, or shall I say the black section of Fulton County, which is South Fulton, so they can control their own destiny. They created their own police department. I don't even think that the agency is even 10 years old yet.
Right.
And you can see already they have this culture and mindset.
Oh, let me tell you, I live in Buckhead, and Buckhead is in the process. In fact, they're having meetings, virtual meetings now, to become their own city and hire their own police department. So that's what Buckhead is in the process of doing now.
And what, you know what that's doing is isolating themselves from those that they consider to be undesirable. They're creating another level of, how should I say, barriers to the average citizen being able to hold them accountable, because now at this point they're saying, hey, listen, we're controlling our own destiny. We have to answer to you. You go from a community to a city, and you do a lot of things as a city that you could do with a community, including stifle your access to public records. And that's one of the important tools of a review board, to be able to determine what a police department does. And people keep hitting, a police department is not a standalone entity. A police department is governed by your elected officials who make, change, and obey these laws and city ordinance that that department operates by. So just keep in mind, a police department is not a standalone entity. It is just a tool that elected officials use to, how should I say, keep business running as normal.
And, you know, I just like to bring up something. There's a question on the board about officers speaking up to weed out bad apples. And I keep referring to my book. It's in my book. But I didn't just write about it. I did it. Where cops were doing things that I thought were bad. One of the first stories I talk about is a woman who was transported to the police district in the trunk of a car. Wow. I almost got violently involved with this particular officer. I was a rookie cop then. I can tell you about police officers that were involved and actively involved in a burglary ring. When I exposed that, I really, really caught it. But as a supervisor, imagine you're going and doing you're a supervisor and your narcotics unit, you're going on a raid, narcotics raid, and you're an active part of the search and you can't find any drugs. It was in a housing project. And then an officer comes behind you and goes exactly to the area that you were searching and comes back with 2 big bags of crack and said, you missed this. And my shock is how I could have made that oversight. But you know what? I don't consider myself perfect. But here is where the point that I'm trying to make, because when the 2 days after that happened, when we got together again, my subordinates knew the type of cop that I was. They knew. Right. And my subordinates came to me and told me what had happened. That cop planted those drugs. That's why I couldn't find it. Well, I handled it. But again, when you establish yourself as someone who's not going to tolerate that type of crap, people will trust you. People will come to you. They don't want to get burned. No, I didn't burn them. No one knew how I found out what I did, because there's ways of doing things. But I handled the situation, and we had the charges dropped against a woman who was arrested. That's in my book. It was a very, very horrible scene that when I talk about it in detail, it really gets me emotional. It really angered me that much. But that officers, and I'm talking about you good cops, you need to start speaking up, because it's through you speaking up that we're going to end a lot of this stuff. We're going to end it. And maybe that's why these departments like Kenosha want to keep the number of blacks down, because they're worrying about what's he going to say. Can we? That's what you hear a lot. Can we trust him? Can we trust him? I mean, can we really trust him? That's what you're going to get. And so they put you through these little tiny tests when you're a rookie cop. They put you through these little tests. They ask you these leading questions. And then there's a determination made. They get together among themselves, a supervisor, and say, well, you know, we can trust him. Or you can't trust this guy. Because that's what happened to me when I was a rookie. The first thing that happened to me, and I write about this in my book. I'm out with the guy's got about 15 years on. We're going to a club check. We should check nightclubs in. And the first thing he asked me is, do you take a note? That's illegal money.
Oh.
And I said, no. And he says, okay, well, you sit in the car and I'll handle this.
Wow.
So he went in and did what he did, and he got whatever he got. But the word went out on me that you can't do this with this guy. Another incident, I'm a rookie cop, basically a rookie, and a guy's walking with me, driving with me. And he says, there goes his quote was a vice pinch for the month. And I mean, what are you talking about? He says, that man walking right there, middle-aged black man walking down the street, coming from work, bothering nobody. Nobody. I says, well, what is he? What did he do? He says he didn't do anything. He says, we're going to lock him up and put some numbers in his pocket, and that's going to be that'll be our vice pinch. That's when the legal numbers were. People used to play the numbers back in the day. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Well,
yes.
I told him not only did I tell him no, I told him why I said no, because I gave him my background from North Philadelphia, how I knew people in my neighborhood who were falsely arrested by police on trumped up charges. And I told him that I didn't come on the department to be that way. Well, from that day on until the remaining 3.5 years I worked in that district, no experience, no veteran officer would work with me. I either worked alone or they had me working with rookie police officers, which was fine with me. I'm fine, because I had gotten tired of these guys, but I couldn't be trusted. So the point of this is that you individual cops, you can make a difference. I'm appealing to you. Your communities all over the country are going to benefit if you stop being silent, stop going along with the program. And yeah, you might be threatened. You might be ostracized for a while. You might made to be feel uncomfortable. But you know what? Behaviors around you will change. And when that's how we make behaviors in a larger circle change, because now these cops who have a tendency to do that, they don't know who to trust or who not to trust. So in spite of the fact that they may hate black people in their hearts, they're not going to act out that hatred. And that's what we want. I'm not trying to change minds. I keep telling you, I'm trying to change behavior.
Okay.
Changing mind is too steep of a hill to climb. You want to change behaviors. And that's what standing up and speaking out will do.
So we have about 6 minutes left. So as Paul, do you have any parting thoughts, ideas, suggestions of where we go from here?
Wow. After listening to Norm, I'm ashamed to have my Philadelphia Eagles t-shirt on.
Hey, I just took off my Eagles shirt before I put on the suit.
Yeah, I'm about to change shirts now. Oh. You know, even though there's a large number of agencies with black police and commanders in high position, it's still hard for black officers to really find a department with supposedly integrity and moralistic values. Because honestly, I don't believe it exists.
Really?
We look at the FBI and look at the level of incompetence and corruption that they had in their ranks, literally from the very beginning to this day. that has yet to be stamped out, right down to your mom and pop, Bonnie Fife, Opie Taylor, Sheriff Taylor departments, and these small communities like Kenosha. You got to ask yourself, why is this so still consistent on every level? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I know both sides. I know having that compassion for people and not giving grandma a ticket for driving no insurance because she had to make a choice between feeding her grandbabies who she's raising at her age and she still got to get forth to work. And I know the side of dealing with dope boys and high crime areas that you get tired of locking up. We should just swing through and come in with fists flying. Didn't I tell you not to be in here? Oh, everybody in the park get knocked out. Mm-hmm. And in the tactics with Taylor toward the demographics you're dealing with. So I do know both sides, but I don't trust any government on any level. Even as they say law enforcement with government officials, there's such a level of malfeasance and contamination that doesn't always have to be on a racial level. You know, I've had the privilege of working with some of the most dysfunctional agencies you could ever imagine, because it's still run by people who have flaws so severe, but they're in positions where their decisions can affect so many. Make it simple. You want a better department, get rid of your incompetent command structure.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I'm sorry, go ahead, Noel.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't mean to cut you off, but I know our time is short. One of the things that that I did yesterday, and Paul, I think you can understand what I'm talking about. I called out Noble.
Absolutely.
Noble is the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. They have been silent throughout this.
Really?
They have been silent throughout the fact that you have, with all this violence and that emanates from Donald Trump, when he first said, and I posted this yesterday, about that it's not stop about not being so nice to people that you arrest and roughing people up. And then the Police Benevolent Association and the Fraternal Order of Police consistently backed this president. And Noble, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, has been silent. The National Organization of the NAACP, silent. And I have written letters to Noble. I have sent them a copy of my book to Noble. Again, just like police commissioners that I have sent my book to and mayors that I have sent my book to, they don't want to deal with the issue. And whenever you see them on television talking about these commissioners and mayors talking about how they're going to resolve the issue, I'm telling you from my experience and what I know, they are dishonest. They're not honest. And all they're trying to do is hold on to their jobs.
So what I want to say, we have
can't put it better myself.
1 minute. So I want to say his name, Jacob Blake. Say his name, Ahmaud Arbery. Say his name, Richard Brooks. Say her name, Breonna Taylor. Say his name, Austin Wanzo.
Wow. Deep.
Yes, this has been a really interesting and well-needed discussion with everything that's going on. And I want to thank our co-host, Paul DesVignes, and our guest host, Mr. Norm Carter. As usual, this has been a very lively, interesting, and informative discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Paul, glad to see you again.
Brother Norm, man, we got to start getting together on better terms.
We got to have coffee one day. Yeah.
Thanks all of our listeners for listening in and joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Night.